In general, there are two ways to scale up a database running transactional workloads. The first is by data partitioning or sharding, and the second one is by replicating data. It is hard to maintain consistency in both of these circumstances, as we will see. The first idea is to partition the data across multiple machines. The data now fits within the main memory of each machine, and queries can now be spread across those machines as well. The advantage here is that we can now serve more clients at the same time, otherwise known as increasing system throughput. The problem, however, is that while writing data is easy, as long as we know which machine is holding the data that we want to update, but now reading data now becomes expensive. Why? Consider running a join query, where the data to be joined actually sits across 3 different partitions. To complete the join, we need to wait for data to be returned from all 3 different machines, and that can take a while. Also, if there are writes that are happening to the data that we want to read as part of the join, then we need to grab local locks on each of those partitions and wait. Or we might get killed and need to restart the entire transaction in case, for instance, of a deadlock. All of these make keeping data consistency really hard. The second idea is to make copies of the data instead of partitioning it across multiple machines. The queries, again, can be spread across all these different replicas, and throughput can also be increased as a result. Time needed to run queries will also be lowered because a client can go to another one of these machines to execute their read query. We also have better fault tolerance because in case if one of the machines is dead, we just go to another one for our query purposes. The problem with this, however, is that while it is easy to execute read queries, writes now becomes very expensive. That is because for every write, we need to touch all the replicas, or otherwise, data will no longer be consistent. Now that we understand why it is difficult to scale relational databases, in the case of partition, we might need to join data across multiple servers, and we need to deal with concurrent writes to them from other transactions. And in the case of replication, we might need to handle inconsistent data in case it has not been updated yet from other machines. So again, consistency is hard in both of these cases. So NoSQL came about with a simple data model where we simply give up some of the functionalities. For instance, we no longer handle joins or provide any kind of consistency whatsoever. The rationale for this is that, well, since not all applications need these functionalities, so there's actually no reason to implement all of that inside a single DBMS and make scaling difficult. So let's try to rely on applications to implement these functionalities as needed, and that is the philosophy behind NoSQL. In this class, we covered ACID earlier, and in NoSQL, there is actually a similar acronym that you might have learned back in Chem 1A. In NoSQL, we provide basic availability, where applications must handle failures and recovery themselves. So, no errors. We provide soft state, where the DBMS might be processing an update from an earlier write, and hence changes its stored data without actually any active transaction running. And we provide eventual consistency, which simply means that the database may or may not ever be consistent, hence the term eventual. Think of this as acid versus base, And that hopefully will make it easier for you to remember the differences.